first of all, we went to the cotton patch and picked cotton because that was one thing we could do. I was 6 years old the first time I was in the cotton patch. It was before Social Security, before there was any money from the government. So we got no money from the government, from our families, from churches. We got nothing from anybody, and we didn't expect it. I just feel like people have lost that idea of being able to take care of themselves. The last day I picked cotton, I picked 250 pounds of that white stuff. I'm telling you, a bowl of it doesn't even weigh an ounce. I took every opportunity I could to learn from anybody that I could learn from. And then I shared that with my students. And a lot of teachers teach, you look at the note and you play it on the piano. You look at the note and you play. I didn't teach that way. That's not the way music is made.
Welcome back to the Boy Mechanic channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate anybody who views this video and just appreciate your time and attention. It does mean a lot to me. Today, my guest is my wife's grandma, but we all call her Grandma Hazel. Hazel Ramsbotham. Ramsbotham. I always call her Grandma Hazel. But she is an author, entrepreneur, teacher, and matriarch of our family. She has written the book 88 Keys to Living a Long and Purposeful Life. Grandma, welcome to my YouTube channel, the Boy Mechanic channel on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel honored.
I really appreciate it. I know you're doing me a favor just to practice interviewing for all of you guys. This is very much me learning how to do interviews and talk to people and interview. So I appreciate the time. But Grandma, I guess the purpose I wanted to focus in on with this interview was, give you a little insight. The Boy Mechanic channel is mainly exploring projects for boys based in the early 1900s. 1915, 1916, 1917, and I'm using some books that were published for boys to do projects. So I currently have some videos in the works that I've been putting together detailing out some of these projects. But I've also wanted to do interviews. I wanted to have a podcast, which is just having conversations about life, about skill sets. It gives people an opportunity just to be welcomed in and just have a conversation and view our conversation. So with the purpose of this interview, I kind of wanted to focus in on your earlier life. In your book, you detailed out some of the struggles that your family went through and what your family had to do and what you personally had to do and what your brothers had to do. But at the same time, you have also been a piano teacher and you've taught lots of students through the years. And because of my focus on my channel, I want to delve into skill sets and mindsets for boys and what they could focus in on, because in this world today, some kids, they don't know which direction they want to go or what they should do. There's just so many options. You don't know what to do, so you don't do anything. Is there any introduction that maybe I missed on my part for you that you would like people to know if they were to just run across you, besides being an author of a book and being a piano teacher and an entrepreneur?
Well, my father died when I was 5 years old with double pneumonia before penicillin had been discovered yet.
Okay.
And I had 3 older brothers. One was 7, one 8, and one 12. And my mother had lost her mother 5 months before. So she was 37 years old and she had 4 children to raise and no husband and no mother, which are 2 very good components if you're going to be raising a family. And it was before Social Security, before there was any money from the government. So we got no money from the government, from our families, from churches. We got nothing from anybody, and we didn't expect it because everybody was poor. It was right in the middle of the Depression, And we just knew that it was up to us to make it. And I just feel like people have lost that idea of being able to take care of themselves because they seem to think someone else should take care of them. We didn't expect that at all.
Okay. So you didn't expect to be taken care of. So what did your family end up? I know in the one of the beginning chapters of your book, you kind of detail out some of those details. Can we maybe explore that a little bit, just kind of as an intro, if people are interested to find out more about your book? Like what things did your brothers do? Did you do? Did your mom do in order to take care of yourselves?
First of all, we went to the cotton patch and picked cotton because that was one thing we could do. I was 6 years old the first time I was in the cotton patch, and that summer of 1936, and I was in the cotton patch picking cotton every summer from then until 1941, until I was 11. By that time, my mother had taught in the old normal school certificate during the First World War for 4 years. And so she thought that if anything ever happened to our dad, that she would be able to go right back to teaching. But during that time she was married to my dad, the laws in Texas changed to require a degree. So she had to start from scratch to get a degree at age 37. And in those days, women didn't go back to school after they had gotten married and had a family.
Yeah.
It was very unusual. So she felt like she was a really old person going back to school at age 37 and getting her degree at that age. But with the $700 that we had left from burying my dad, he had a $1,000 life insurance policy. It took $300 to bury him.
Okay.
And the $700 that was left, she bought a house in Commerce, Texas, a block away from the campus.
A whole house for $700?
A whole house for $700. And it was one of those houses that had a veranda all the way around the front. It had a room that stuck out there and a veranda all the way around it. And then the rest of the house. So my grandfather was a wonderful carpenter, so he made that first room that was out of the veranda, he made that into a little kitchenette for a family. So they had a little kitchen and one room, and Mother rented that room out. And then there was a side room that she rented out for called light housekeeping, and that meant that they could sleep there and they could eat peanut butter and crackers and cheese and that sort of thing, but they could not do any cooking. They had to just eat out of cans or whatever. And so there's one room on this side, one room on this side, and then there was one bathroom. We all used the same bathroom. We were thrilled because we'd never had a bathroom before. We had had outhouse out on the oil lease when my dad was living. And then there was one main room with a big pot-bellied stove, and that was our living room. All of us slept on a screened-in back porch, Mother and I in one bed, the three boys in the other bed, and there was a little kitchen off of that. And so we stayed in that section of the house, rented out the rest of it, and altogether we got $28 a month for renting those two rooms for light housekeeping and the other room was for a family. $28 a month, and my brother got a paper route and he made $4 a month.
Okay.
And I thought he was rich because it didn't cost much to buy anything. You know, you could buy a loaf of bread for 5 cents in those days. But it still was pretty lean, even though we were getting that $28 a month to live on, and then going to the cotton patch in the summertime. But we did not really think anything of it because everybody else was poor too. So we just didn't feel like we were any worse off than anybody else. We just accepted it.
Just made do.
Just made do,
Huh.
and didn't expect anyone to help us.
So, when you went to the cotton patch, you said summertime. Was that like May through September, or?
Well, after school was out, Mother didn't want us picking cotton and missing school. She was very, very
Okay.
adamant that we get our education. So we went to cotton patch every day, 6 days a week, every day except Sunday, once we got out of school. And it was a status symbol to be able to pick a lot of cotton. Now I'm talking about picking it out of the bowl. You reached in and you picked it was kind of like a 4-leaf clover, and you picked the cotton out of the bowl. Now there were little stickers at the end of each. As this cotton bowl opened up, to release the cotton so that it was ready to be picked, there was a sticker at the end of each one of those corners. And it was very, very sharp, but you stayed away from that. And every time I mentioned about picking cotton, people say, oh, I bet your hands were really, bloody and all that. No, we didn't. That was the least of our worries. You pick cotton out of the bowl. You don't handle the bowl. You just pick the cotton out and fill our sacks. The only time we could get a drink of water was when we filled our sack, and then we would go to the wagon in the middle of the pasture, and they would weigh our cotton, and we could get a drink out of the dipper that everybody else drank out of. We did not think a thing in the world about that. I mean, it was wet, and that's all we needed. There was no place to go to the bathroom. There was no porta potties in those days, and there were no trees in the middle of the cotton patch. So I envied my brothers because they didn't have to worry about it. I was just really embarrassed for anybody to see me, and so I would go through the barbed wire fence, risking my skin or my clothes, and go find a tree that I could hide behind to go to the bathroom, and then
So you had to walk
back.
out of the
I
pasture.
had to walk out of the cotton patch in order to find a place for me to relieve myself. So we didn't want to drink much water because we didn't want to have to go to the bathroom very often. But we just had to have just enough water to keep us from, really being thirsty. And we would sweat. And that's the last time I ever sweated, was when I was in that cotton patch. We would sweat, and then when a little breeze would come, that sweat would cool us off. So we didn't mind the sweating. We felt good, really. And we would, at the end of the day, we would go to the wagon in the middle of the pasture, and the farmer would add up the many pounds that we picked, and pay us then, because he didn't know if we'd be coming back the next day.
Okay.
You got paid every day.
So you got paid per the job?
We got paid for the job right then. We put the money in our pocket and took it home. We didn't stop on the way. We rode in a wagon to take us back home, and we would just take the money out of our pocket, lay it on the kitchen table. We never touched a penny of it for ourselves, ever. And after my mother had taught for 3 years, after she had gotten her degree and started teaching and had taught, she said, and my oldest brother had gone to the military by then, 1941, before the war started. He went in February when he turned 18 of 1941. The war didn't start until December of 1941. My other 2 brothers went out to my uncle's out in, we called it West Texas, is out in near the Amarillo area to work in the wheat harvest. So I was at home alone that summer. Mother said, you don't have to pick cotton anymore if you don't want to. Well, who would want to? What a choice. And about that time, my little friends came and asked me to teach them how to play the piano. Well, I didn't know how to teach anybody to play the piano. I mostly played by ear myself, but I figured I can teach them what I know. Okay, it'll be a quarter a lesson, I said.
Quarter a lesson.
And
So you were 11 years old at this point?
11 years old.
11 years old, okay.
And that started my piano teaching career.
Okay.
The last day I picked cotton, I picked 250 pounds of that white stuff. I'm telling you, a bowl of it doesn't even weigh an ounce. And that's counting the bowl. But to take the cotton out and weigh it, it's weigh even less than that. But 250 pounds of that, it's hard for me to imagine that I did that, but I know I did. 250 pounds that last day that I picked. So when I told my little friends it'd be a quarter a lesson, I told my mother, and Mother let me keep my money.
Okay.
And I told my mother if I could have 5 students, I could make as much money in 2.5 hours in the comfort of my living room as I did out there in that cotton patch in 110-degree temperature all day, from sun up till sundown. We're not talking about an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
We're talking about sun up till sundown in the summertime, which was at least 12 hours. And I decided, this is for me. I get to keep my money. And so I started teaching then, and I taught from then on. I was teaching someone. And then when I got to college, and then I started playing the accordion. I started teaching accordion, and I taught for a music store in Wichita Falls, Texas, when Mother, after the boys left, my second brother graduated, they said, Mother, you've got to move out of this hole down here, because when it rained, if you were out, you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
And if you were in, you couldn't get out. And they said, we can't risk being AWOL in the military and come to see you. So if you want us to come to see you, you're going to have to move.
Okay.
Well, she was a little nervous about moving because it was so hard to get a job as a teacher then. But by 1944,
a little easier.
A few years later, it was easy to get a job because so many of the men had to go to the military. And we were in the World War II, of course, and so they needed teachers. And she got a job in a little town outside of Wichita Falls, Texas, 10 miles west, and at this little town called Iowa Park, Texas. And we moved there, and that is where I lived and went to college there at Midwestern University at Wichita Falls, Texas, for 2 years. And then I did the really smart thing and got married. But at least I had 2 years of college in before and I was on a full ride scholarship, so Mother didn't have to pay a penny for me to go to school. But I taught from the time I was 11. I taught all along until 2014.
Okay. So I have
75 years.
Yeah, I have some questions on your musical career, but just a couple clarification questions that I had. So the cotton bags, sacks. How big were those sacks?
They were about 3 feet long, or 6 feet long, about 6 feet long, and they dragged, and they wrapped around our neck, and we pulled them behind us, and we would walk along and pick the cotton and put them in the bag. As we walked along, it would drag along behind us, and we couldn't get a drink of water until we filled our bag.
So how many pounds would you say that each sack was?
Each sack would probably weigh about 30
pounds?
30 or 40 pounds.
Wow.
30, as we dragged along.
So that's like a couple hours of work.
Yeah, it would get heavy, and we would take it to the middle of the pasture where the wagon was always there.
Yeah.
And then we would get it weighed and emptied, and then get a drink of water, and then go back to that sea of cotton. As far as you could see, all around, cotton was everywhere. And the best, the first picking was always the best, because it was more plentiful.
Yeah.
And if it was too tall and too green, then we had to look for the cotton in there because, you know, the leaves would be in our way. But if it was too small, then it was so spindly, we'd have to bend over farther. Uh, so we liked it when it was just kind of about a couple of feet high
Yeah.
and at first picking. The next picking was more walking than it was picking, and so we didn't make as much money because we couldn't pick as fast.
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of ways that it grew, but we went to wherever we could get to do the job. And
Wow.
we did it every day, Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Saturday. Okay. Wow. So you guys didn't actually, during the summer, there was no summer fun.
Well,
You
yeah,
were working
well, we
all
were
day,
working
every day.
all day, every day, but there's always nighttime. And I remember we would play hide and seek out in our yards,
Okay.
you know, with the neighborhood kids after dark.
Oh,
We
really?
could do that.
You still had energy for
We
that.
still had energy for that, I guess.
So that's really hard even for me to even understand, because you worked 12, 14-hour days, very little water. I'm imagining you had breakfast, lunch, and dinner while working.
Well, we had breakfast before we went to work.
Oh, breakfast before work.
And then we took a lunch. Our lunch this was before plastic.
Okay.
So our lunch was wrapped in wax paper, and it was usually a peanut butter sandwich. Peanut butter banana sandwich were our favorite. Or I can't think of other things we had. And maybe an apple.
Okay.
And that would be our lunch.
Wow.
And then at night we had our supper. We called it supper. It was breakfast, lunch, and breakfast, dinner, and supper is what we called it. So at night, if we might not have anything but cornbread and milk, or we might have cornmeal mush, or we might have. We didn't get very much. I mean,
No.
we didn't eat very much, and we weren't fat. I can tell you for
No.
sure. We're not like the kids today that are fat and lazy.
Ah.
We were very, very thin because we didn't eat very much, and we worked.
Yeah. Yeah. You worked hard all day.
Right.
Okay, so I have some questions on your musical career now,
Okay.
and how you got started. You're 6 years old, you're working in the cotton patch all day, and now you're 11. You're evidently, how did you learn to play piano? You said you played by ear, so did you have someone teaching you, and how did you learn, or what drove you to start playing piano?
Well, we had a piano, and when I was in first grade, our teacher taught us a little tune, a little song every day. We had a wonderful first grade teacher, and she just taught us a little song, and I would go home and pick it out on the piano and play it, pick it out by ear. And pretty soon I was tired of just doing the melody, and I started putting the left hand with it. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just experimenting all the time. And my mother was so concerned that I was playing by ear, because in her day, the idea was if you learn to play by ear, you'll never learn to play by music.
Oh, okay.
So she was really concerned about it. But it evidently didn't bother me, because I just kind of learned to read music by osmosis. I mean, I don't even remember learning to read music. But when she started teaching, in 1939, we moved to a little community called Cunningham, Texas, which is 25 miles southeast of Paris, Texas. There was a girl in high school there who was quite a nice pianist, and she asked her to teach me piano when I was 9 and when I was 10,
Okay.
just in the winter time.
Okay.
So evidently during that time I learned to read music somewhat, and she would just be gone in the summer, and after, when I was 10, they moved away and there was no one there at all. So I had those lessons, and I didn't have any more lessons on piano until I was a sophomore in college. But when I was 12, I got interested in playing the accordion, and I got a little small bass accordion. The smallest one is called a 12 bass. That means you could only play, it's just a major chord, a bass and a chord, and you could only play in about 3 or 4 different keys, because there are only 12 basses. But I got a 48 bass, which was a little bit better. It had more keys, and it had a major and a minor chord, plus a counterbass, we called it, which would allow me to play scales. Add that to my. But I was very unsatisfied with it because it didn't have everything I wanted on it. 120 bass is the standard size for it, which has a major, minor, seventh, and diminished chord, plus a counterbass to play scales, and the bass part. But my hand was completely deterred because you just push buttons. You play your right hand, but you push buttons. So when we moved from Cunningham in 1944, Mother sold the piano.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't even have a piano
Nothing
anymore
to practice on.
to practice on. And
in
she just didn't want me-
1944, you were 13, 14?
14 when we moved.
14, yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know why I didn't say, "What are you doing selling the piano?" She just kind of sold it, and we moved, and then I was without a piano. So I really depended on my accordion then.
Yeah.
And then when I started college in 1947, I knew I wanted to major in music. And I wouldn't have ever even thought of anything but music. But I didn't have a piano, so she bought a piano for me to practice on. So I would practice in the morning before I would go to school at 5 o'clock in the morning. And but I still didn't have lessons in college until my sophomore year.
Okay.
My sophomore year, I took lessons from a real teacher for the first time.
Okay. Wow.
But I had been playing.
You'd already been playing and teaching.
All that time, and teaching at this music store.
Oh, teaching at a music store. Okay.
Yeah, I started
Okay.
teaching at the music store when I was 15.
Okay. Yeah, because you had no piano at that point.
But I didn't have a piano. But I taught accordion. I was teaching accordion.
Okay.
And I had a student come to take lessons who was 6 years old when I was 16. And we are still in communication with each other because he just called me actually on the way up here.
Oh, really?
Because he is a teacher, and he would call me all the time and ask me where I went to judge for National Piano Guild auditions. And so he's been a teacher all these years too, and we've kept in touch. And he's just one of the many, many that I taught. But I had him for, when he was 6 years old. And he told me when I finally connected with him again after many years, he said, I don't know what I learned. I just knew that you were the most beautiful person I had ever seen in my life, and you loved music, and you instilled that love of music into my life. I thought, what a nice compliment.
That is a nice compliment.
I never considered myself beautiful. I just never ever was concerned about that. Yeah. I just didn't think I was especially pretty, and I didn't really worry about it. Yeah. I didn't do a lot. I didn't do very much to make it better.
You're focused on other things.
I was just perfectly happy with what God gave me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I've lived my life.
That's cool. So, I guess one of the things that maybe people might be interested in is you started learning how to play piano. Was there a driving force behind you wanting to learn? Was it just your own internal driving force, or did someone kind of force that on
No.
you, or did someone inspire you?
No one forced me, and it was just within me. I remember saying to my mother when I was 6 years old, before I was 5 or 6 years old, and I said, when I grow up, I want to be a piano teacher. I don't even know where that came from.
Okay.
So evidently it was something innate, and I definitely was not forced at all.
Okay.
I was just interested, and I took every opportunity I could to learn from anybody that I could learn from. And then I shared that with my students. And a lot of teachers teach, you look at the note and you play it on the piano. You look at the note and you play. I didn't teach that way. That's not the way music is made. Music is made up of chords and melody, and you don't do the hunt and peck system.
Yeah.
That's just not the way you learn. So I taught in a very different way.
There's a spider.
By teaching what music is made of, rather than monkey see, monkey do. That was not the way that I taught. And I never ever had to advertise for students. I had more students than I could handle most of the time. I had a waiting list, and I didn't have a big full studio until 1960, when I finally got my husband through college, and he was able to start making a living for us. And by that time, he had moved us 17 times. We'd been married 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was ready to put down some roots and started my home studio.
Yeah.
And so I taught, and a lot of teachers, when they have a baby, they say, oh, well, I can't teach anymore because I have this baby. Well, I already had two then.
Yeah.
They were 6 and 4 when we moved to Lander, Wyoming. And the first year after we moved there, we planned to have the rest of our family, which we wanted at least 2 or 3 more children. So the first year I had 1 baby, and the next year I had twins. So I had three babies in diapers at the same time.
Yeah.
3 babies 18 months apart. And I never quit teaching at all because of it, because what I would do is I would put them down after we had lunch. I would lay down on they called it the big bed, and read to them Bible stories, and they would go to sleep, and I would get up and start teaching. And I taught until 5 o'clock. And I would start teaching about 2 o'clock, and I would teach till 5. When the oldest daughter came home from school, she would entertain the 3 babies while I was teaching until I finished teaching. They never disturbed or anything. I was in the same house with them, but they knew better than to disturb me while I was teaching, and I just never did have any problem with it. And I just taught all along. But I've had so many colleagues that say, well, they can't teach because they have a baby. Well, I had 5 babies, 5 little ones, and it never deterred me at all. I just taught when they were napping and when they were in school. I just limited when I taught, and it worked great.
So I've heard personally from quite a few folks, don't turn your passion into a job. Because then you might lose your passion because it's work at that point. But it seems you took the opposite approach. You turned your passion of music into a teaching job. I guess, did you, like, was that just a natural thing, or were you, like, I guess at the age of 11, why did you decide to start charging for something that you were passionate about?
Well,
and do you disagree with that statement?
No, well, I kind of disagree with it, but my friends were asking me to teach them, and I needed to make some money because my mother never ever gave me any money. She never in my entire life gave me even a penny to spend for myself. My entire life. And I worked my way through college. She didn't pay one dime on any of that. But I loved to do handwork, embroidering. I'd started doing that when I was 6, and I loved doing it, but I wanted to make things for my hope chest. In those days, it was considered important for you to be prepared when it was time for you to be married, so you had things for your household. And of course, I never ever considered not marrying. I planned to get married all my whole life. And so I made pillowcases and dresser scarves and tablecloths and cup towels and all kinds of things like that. But I needed money to buy the thread and the pattern, the materials. And so I figured if they want me to teach them and I'm not going to be picking cotton, well, I didn't keep any of the money I made when I was picking cotton in the first place, but this was a way that I could make some money and I could spend it for myself to do the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with my money. I learned to crochet when I was 12, and I have crocheted miles of crochet thread.
So
and I learned on thread, not yarn, with thread.
So that's really impressive to me. You took one skill, and then you took the money that you earned from that to learn another skill.
Oh yeah.
And then you were probably using that to make more money.
I've never sold any of my projects that I've crocheted.
Okay.
I've crocheted 4 bedspreads, and that's not Afghans. I'm not talking about blankets. Afghans, I didn't ever crochet one. I crocheted with thread, not yarn.
Okay.
And so I made many tablecloths and many, many gifts and doilies and wall hangings that, excuse me, things like that. And I've made all the gifts that I've ever given. I've never bought gifts. I've made them all.
You personalized them.
Yes, personalized gifts.
So
I've been very frugal my entire life. Yeah.
So you've had lots of students. You said you taught for 75 years.
Yes.
One thing I want to, maybe for the person out there that doesn't really have any skills or doesn't think they have any skills, do you have maybe any advice? I know you taught music, and so maybe that's your focus, but do you have any advice for them for learning a skill or how to take a skill and turning that into something productive that they can use for the rest of their life? And maybe how someone would go about doing that?
Well, I think everybody has a talent, at least one. Everybody can do something. And I think they need to start experimenting and seeing what they really like, and then follow that. You know, it might be skating, or it might be playing some kind of sports, or it might be doing some kind of handicraft that they like to do, or something that they like to do, but usually it's to do something for yourself that you want to do for yourself.
Okay.
And then you can turn that into making it work for other people. I don't know. I just feel very, very blessed that I was able to turn something I loved into a career.
You decided in 2014 you decided to retire from teaching after 75 years, but as outlined in your book, you became a businesswoman by starting a business after you retired at the age of, what was it, 84. So do you want to talk a little bit about the fact that you moved from one thing to the next at the age of 84, when most people are deciding to slow down and take a chill pill? You decided to start a business.
Right.
So what's your next business that you started?
My next business is in health and fitness. when I was in my early 50s, my son, my youngest son, was in college, and he was ROTC fitness, whatever they call it, anyway, instructor. And we were sitting together. We went to church together. And when it was time to stand up after the sermon, my knees must have cracked. I didn't even hear them, but and he whispered to me, "Mom, is that your knees cracking like that?" And I said, "I guess." So when we got home, he said, "You're far too young to have that happen." Well, I didn't feel very young at that point because of the things that had happened. But he said, "I want you to do 40 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, and 40 deep knee bends every day, and then do 10 minutes of cardio, running in place, doing jumping jacks or doing something, making it a 20-minute workout, and I want you to do it every day." And I said, "I can't even do a push-up." And he said, "That's okay, you can do one today, tomorrow you can do two, and the next day you can do." And I said, he said, "I guarantee you, if you will do that," and I mean every day, I don't mean Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or 2 days a week, I mean every single day. "If you will do it, you'll still be able to do it when you're 80. And I said, "Really?" You know, it's 30 years away.
Yeah.
And he said, "I guarantee it." And he said, "You won't be like your mother. You won't be just shuffling along and barely able to walk. You'll be able to pick up your feet and walk. You'll be able to travel. You'll be able to do anything you want. But you have to do it every day." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it," because I didn't have anybody to take care of me. I knew I was on my own. Yeah. And I needed to do it so that I could continue to teach, so that I could continue to make enough money to eventually retire if I got to where I couldn't teach.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." So I did. And when I was 80, one day I remembered that conversation, and I called him and I said, "I owe you my life. I would have never done it if it hadn't been you.
If he hadn't said something.
If you hadn't been the one, because I knew you cared about me, and I knew he was already a triathlete, so I knew he knew what he was talking about." And I said, I decided I needed to do it. And so now I'm 80 and I'm still doing it every day. And he said, "Mom, you don't know how many people I've told to do that, but you're the one that should get the credit. You did it. People, I've told lots of people that, but they haven't done it. You get the credit. You've done it." And now I'm 94. I take no medication. Everything works. Nothing hurts. And I've decided I would rather eat my vegetables than to become one.
I like that line.
And so I teach people now how to be more healthy.
Teach people now how to be more healthy, and that's your business.
That's my business. I represent a company called Juice Plus,
Yep.
which allows you to get 30 fruits and vegetables in your body every day for less than the price of a cup of coffee. And
A cup of coffee is pretty expensive these days.
yeah, right, and a whole lot less. Actually, you can get 2 orders for it now that they've gone up so much.
Yeah.
But it is a way to get, it's the next best thing for fresh fruits and vegetables. The best thing, of course, is to pick it off the vine and eat it. When the government says we need 9 to 13 a day, it means picked off of the source and eaten right then.
Yeah.
Not cooked, not canned, not frozen,
Yeah.
nothing. Eaten right then. Now, how many of those can you eat a day?
Yeah, not much.
And even in the summertime when I grow a garden, I can't even eat that many.
Yeah.
I maybe eat 2 or 3, but not that many. And you certainly can't OD on it. So what this does is bridges the gap between what you do eat and what you should eat, and it gives you more fruits and vegetables in your body every day that you couldn't possibly be able to do even if you went to the store and tried to buy everything. One of my friends, before she started taking Juice Plus said that her life consisted of shopping, chopping, slopping, and mopping because she was juicing. And really, it's not. They do all the work.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that. And people who juice throw away the fiber, and that's the thing we need most in our body.
Yeah.
So juicing is not an alternative. So this is the best, and I am so thankful that God brought this into my life, because now I have macular degeneration,
Yeah.
and I would not be able to see to teach now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see some, but not at the level that I was playing the piano.
Yeah.
I play every day.
Yeah.
Every morning at 6 o'clock when I'm at home, I play for the better part of an hour, 45 minutes to an hour every day, to try to keep up the skills that I still have. But reading music is
A little more difficult.
Is much more difficult, and I struggle with that. And I'm just hoping I don't get any worse.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on now. But I enjoy the playing, and I enjoy playing things that I play a lot by ear,
Yeah.
as well as by music. And so I'm just trying to make the best of what I have left.
Yeah. One last quick question. When did you write this book? What age were you?
I was 88 when I wrote it.
Yeah.
And I had been told for years, you've got to write a book. You've got to. Every time I'd meet someone new on an airplane or wherever I was going, we would talk and they'd say, well, you need to write a book. And then the first thing I decided to do when I quit teaching, I wanted to meet people, and I didn't know anybody except people from church and people I taught.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody in the community where I lived, and of course neighbors. But other than that, I didn't know anybody. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be speaking in front of people. I'd like to join Toastmasters.
Yeah.
So I joined Toastmasters, and as I would give my speeches that were required, people in the group would say, do your children know these stories you're teaching, you're telling? I said, well, of course they lived them. Oh, but that's just, they had a child's perspective. They probably don't really remember it the way it was. You need to write it down. You need to write it for them. And I kept saying, I don't have time, I don't have time. And my children kept saying, Mom, you've got to write your memoirs. You've got to write your memoirs. You know, nobody would ever believe your life. And I said, they might not believe it anyway, because people can write lies, you know. But they said, we want you to write your memoirs for us.
Yeah.
I kept saying, I don't have time, I don't have time. But finally one day, in January of 2018, I thought of this title, and it was 2018, and I wanted to use 88 keys to living, something about 88 keys, and I was 88.
Yeah.
Or going to be 88 in April. So I wrote it, and when the 17th of April it launched on Amazon, I called all 5 of my children and said, well, you've been wanting me to do this. Now you can order your copy on Amazon.
I like that.
Because I didn't have any copies.
Yeah.
I had to order my own copies. And I didn't see any point in ordering copies and getting them and then mailing it to them.
Yeah, just have them order it.
They might as well just order their own copy in the first place. And then when I was 90, I was 88 when I wrote it. And then when I was 90, I read it on Audible with my voice.
Okay.
And I thought that would be really hard.
I just learned that. You put it on Audible. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
with your own
really?
voice.
Yeah. And I thought it would really be hard because, you know, you're supposed to read it word for word.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll be going blah, 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 stumbling all over myself. But, you know, it was so much easier than I thought it would be.
So that was at 90. So now you're 94. Are you going to do like book 2?
Oh, I only have one life. It's just the story of my life. But my children have told me, Mom, You really did soft pedal the rough parts. And I said, well, I didn't want it to be too much of a downer for people to read.
Yeah.
And so they said it doesn't sound nearly as rough as it was at the time. And I said, well, I didn't go too much into detail about it. But anyway, I'm very glad that I wrote it now. I kept saying, I'm going to wait until I get to the top of my company and then I'll write it.
Oh,
Well, then,
okay.
in 2018, I realized I was noticing the people that were at the top of the company, and they were busy as could be. I thought, I don't think I'll be any less busy when I get there
Yeah.
as I am now. Maybe I better go ahead and write it because I might start forgetting things. That's what my children were afraid of. They were afraid I was going to forget the details.
Yeah.
Now, I think as we get older, we may have little forgetful things that we forget, but we don't forget the things that are important in our life. We remember all those things. So I could remember them and write them down. So that's the way it was.
Well, cool, Grandma. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up the interview here. I think that's a good way to end it.
Okay.
Your book can be found on Amazon and Audible. Is there anywhere else that people could go to find out more about you and your book and your work?
Well, it's in our public library in
Also,
Aurora,
public
Colorado, and it's a copy of it there. And I've tried to check into getting it to other places, but it's too much red tape. And the last place I talked to, they wanted the price of the book to be printed on the book.
Okay.
Well, I ordered the books, and the price is nowhere printed on, and I don't even know how to get that on there. So I thought, okay, I didn't write it to make money. I just wrote it for my children, and I can order it 100 at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm on my 10th box right now.
Wow.
So
Well, there's people that are interested.
there are people that are interested, and everywhere I go, I sell them, and they're $20, and I autograph it for them.
Well, I'll make sure to put links in the video of the video descriptions so people could go to Amazon or to Audible. I appreciate all of you guys listening into this conversation with Grandma Hazel. I appreciate your time and attention. And if you have a comment, you can leave it in the comment section. My guest today was entrepreneur, lifelong teacher, author, Hazel Ramsbotham. And so thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.